Oh, good evening. It's really wonderful to be with you. And thank you for your mission and ministry. These have been strange times, haven't they? For the last year, we have been forced to do mission and ministry in ways that we never imagined we would have to do them, right? Um, and as we look forward, it also challenges us now that we've got the vaccines that are coming. Uh, we're challenged to recognize that uh, church, our ministry, our mission is really changed by this past year. We're not going to be able to go back to doing things exactly the way we were doing them in the past. Um, and that is challenging to us today in terms of our ministry with our men and the ministry and mission of Christ within the church as a whole. And I want to give thanks actually for you, for your pastors who have in wonderful ways adapted to the challenges. I know that many of them were scared to death. Many of you were probably scared to death. The first time that you had to organize your meeting around Zoom, and we're still learning that technology, right? I'm learning stuff about that all the time. And it took creativity and partnerships in ways that we've never had to partner before to get through this last year. And I would say to you that it is going to become immensely important in the post-COVID world to look at partnerships once again. In the past, United Methodist Men, as well as other ministries, United Methodist Women, youth ministries, evangelism, we have thought about those ministries in silos, that they did their thing over here. and if there was a need in the greater church, then maybe they'd make a request to this ministry over here, and they may or may not meet the request that was made, or they would define exactly what piece of the request they would respond to. I would say that it's a new day where we have to think in terms of breaking down those silos and realizing that the mission of United Methodist Men doesn't exist by itself in its own world, but the mission of United Methodist Men is actually to permeate every other ministry of the church. So what I mean by that is, we have a good foundation for this already, because the United Methodist Men has always, the focus of their ministry has always been to all men, right? You've focused on all men. You've already recognized that we're to participate in diverse ministries of the church. We're to be part of prayer groups and missions and Bible studies, retreats, workshops, seminars, small groups. We're to lead and participate in our communities, teaching Sunday school or youth ministries, being involved in the leadership of scouting, mentoring, assisting in leading worship. We've recognized that we're to be a part of all those things, but we've usually thought about it as, United Methodist Men coming in to do these things like once on a special occasion, or the Bible study. It's a United Methodist Men Bible study, as opposed to being a study that the United Methodist Men do in partnership with family ministries, or in partnership with United Methodist Women, or in partnership with scouts or leadership groups. So we need to think as we fulfill our mission, which is to support spiritual growth among men. We have to help our men understand that as they mature as disciples in this time, that they need to equip themselves to encourage spiritual formation, not just among their own group of men, but how do we take that gift of the men and really partner in ways that we've never thought about before for our mission and our ministry. Maybe an idea starts in the United Methodist Men for a new ministry or a new mission or a new connection within the community, but instead of doing all ourselves, we seek, maybe a planning and a discerning and a prayer group can be formed with some members of the United Methodist Men and some members of another group and another group and another group that have the passion for that particular mission or ministry in the church. I think going forward, we really need to grab a hold of the power of collaborative ministry and partnerships in order to forward the mission and ministry of Jesus Christ among all of the men in our church. The fact of the matter is that, like you all are connected in so many different ways. It's not just the United Methodist Men's Group, but as Krista came on, one of you was helping with putting out luminaries. I think it was Chuck was helping to set out luminaries for a worship service. We recognize we already have connections and relationships with people and other planning groups and other ministry teams in the church. Well, now is the time to begin to partner in ways that maybe we've never talked about or imagined before. It's kind of a new pathway almost for thinking about how we do our ministries. And we need to do that because men's ministry is important, because we lead others best by modeling Jesus Christ in our thoughts, words, and deeds. And if we only do our ministry in our men's group, the larger church doesn't get to see how we model Jesus Christ in our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. Felix will never forget working with Chuck in those luminaries. I mean, what the message that gave to Felix was, church is important. And worship is important. And it's not just my mom because she's the minister, but there's someone in this congregation who thinks it's important too and is willing to help in that particular mission and ministry. That whole picture just sends so many different messages, and it sent messages not just to Felix, who was involved in that activity, but to anybody who kind of observed that. That was a mentoring moment. That was a mentoring moment with that communicated that Felix, as young as he was, is important and could be involved and had an impact, could have an impact on that particular ministry of the church. Wow, just think about that. If in every piece of the church, the Methodist men were thinking, how do I as a United Methodist man have an impact on this particular ministry of the church? What would it look like to have a discussion within the United Methodist Men's Group to say, what other groups, what other ministries or missions are we related to in the church, just because people in our group are related, and how might we have a greater impact on that particular ministry? And how might we invite other, how might we invite other men to be a part of that? Some of our younger men who have families, I always get this question, how do we get younger men involved? Well, younger men are dealing with children and family and jobs. So where are they showing up in your church? If they're showing up for worship or they're showing up for Sunday school, there's a place where United Methodist men can actually come alongside them and get involved in whatever the mission, of that worship service or that Sunday school, or if it's, I know Cross Lanes has the Church Mouse, I think it is. Are there younger men that are involved in that? And how can United Methodist come alongside to fulfill the mission of helping other men mature in Christian discipleship? And so it's kind of a different way. They may not show up to a United Methodist men's meeting, but if you build relationships are a really powerful thing. And so if you build relationships in the other connections you have with some of your younger men, if the United Methodist men then in building those relationships comes across a bigger mission or a bigger project or a bigger ministry they want to be a part of, or they want to start, then the relationships will give you an entry into inviting those younger men to be a part of a bigger project that may just impact not just the church, but the community in which you all live. So I would encourage you to think about how you build relationships across all those ministry areas. That's actually a sign of spiritual maturity, is actually signified in spiritual reproduction. So how do we, as mature followers of Christ, help others increase their maturity in Christ? And a lot of times the beginning place is simply by building a relationship and saying to somebody, oh, well, I know you may not have time for, the United Methodist men's meeting on X night, but I'm really glad that you're a part of Sunday school. What brings you to Sunday school? What is it that makes Sunday school important to you? What is it that makes our church services or our worship services important to you? What is it about your participation with the Church Mouse or whatever ministry that is important to you? And if you get to build relationships where you get to understand the interests of the persons, you can begin to dream big dreams and invite connections and networking in ways that you never maybe you've never seen before. Spiritually growing men really help congregations become alive. They really do. And again, I would encourage you to look at the partnerships that can happen. I often wondered growing up both why United Methodist men did their thing over here and why United Methodist women always did their thing over here. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if they had some wonderful projects and ministries together? Or even think about, and you already know this as United Methodist men, because you've had an impact in your scouting programs, so you know how important it is to have a partnership with younger guys or younger people through our scouting ministries. And there's so much more that we can do with our scouting ministries. And it doesn't just have to be scouting. It can be youth group ministries. Take the stuff that happens in scouting, there's nothing that says you can't transmit that to youth group or young adult groups. So if you've been active in scouting and the scouting ministries, all those attributes of scouting, they all work. And guess what? They work not just for youth, but they work for adults too. What would it mean to hold a spiritual growth seminar or retreat that walks through the, all the thrifty and wise and kind and, all of those, the scout law and the scout way of life. And, that's a tremendous gift that we have that we can really help to evolve in a different way. Thinking beyond the church, because I think United Methodist Men's future is also in partnerships beyond the church. We've had a year where lots of our children have lost a whole year, really, of instruction, school instruction. Think about that. A whole year. We have a bunch of students who are really behind in terms of their schoolwork. And their parents are at wit's end too. Because parents have had to do their job if they didn't lose it in the pandemic or were laid off. They've had to educate their children in processes that were not the same as when they went to school. I mean, I remember even my own children going to school and trying to help them with math, and they were doing something called new math. and mom didn't know new math. She knew old math. And it really was frustrating as a parent trying to help your children with something that had changed. I mean, we would come out with the same conclusion at the end, but gosh, mom just wasn't doing it the right way. You've got a bunch of frustrated parents out there. What would it look like for the United Methodist Men to partner with some families and some children, even over the summer, to do kind of fun makeup camps, helping with this basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, how to even have build friendships and relationships. We used to use, in school, the Bible to do all those things. So, we can use spiritual resources in all that. But what would it look like to try to have some conversations with the parents in your community to see where they feel their children are behind and what might be helpful to get them ready to re-enter the school year in the fall better prepared? We've got United Methodist Men that have all kinds of gifts that can help encourage our children and our students in ways that maybe we haven't thought about before. And the other, we have college campuses in our communities. West Virginia State, Charleston University. We've got some local schools. What would it look like if we could take a larger part in finding out how we could be more helpful and encouraging to students, come alongside for some mentoring? I know that there are some faculty and staff in those students that could really, really come alongside some of our students in ways that hasn't happened before. Sometimes we've got students who come into these, into our universities and our colleges from all over the world, and some of them have no family anywhere close. What would it mean for a United Methodist Men's group to adopt some of our international students? and give them a place to have, you know, a meal, or get to know, or get to talk about, you know, how exciting would it be for one of our campus students from another place to come in and talk about how they've experienced life, either halfway around the world, or, you know, we could build some really beautiful relationships there, that could be life changers, not only for you, but for the students as well. We've got our foster care. West Virginia is the state that has the largest number of children in foster care. And we don't have enough foster care families right now. Now, I'm not suggesting that you become a foster care parent unless that is your call. However, they're really looking for connections with scouting programs and help in getting their foster care children and their biological children involved in scouting or youth groups or other leadership building programs. What would it look like for the United Methodist women and the United Methodist men to get together and to do a camp that they design in the summer, that they have to do something with, you know, how do you cook a hot dog? How do you paint something? How do you repair something? There's just all kinds of things, thinking out of the box. What are the things that your parents taught you that kids aren't learning today? I mean, when I went to school, we had, where I learned to sew at school. I learned to cook at school. I learned to repair stuff or work with wood in shop class at school. And now our school systems don't teach, by and large, those everyday things that really make a difference in someone's life. We don't teach people. I hear it now. Here's a real need in our community. People don't know how to deal with their finances. Our children do not know how to budget. They do not know. And if you don't understand compounding interest when you are leaving high school for a trade or leaving college for a job, you can really do yourself some damage in ways that you're not ready for the future of the church, for your future life. What is it that we can do to help our high schoolers, our college students, be better off in their financial understanding and their handling of money, so that when they come to a retirement age, they're not panicked. Because compounding interest started now can make a difference when you reach retirement. And you need to learn that early in life, not later in life. There's a gift. And think about it. There are young families in each of your congregations that have not learned those lessons and are afraid to ask, and they're in trouble. But if you opened it up, if you did something like that, you'd have people who would connect in ways they hadn't before. So there's all kinds of connections. I would argue that our nurses and our hospital workers right now, in a few months, they're going to suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. They have been under such pressure. What is it that we can do to relieve some of the stress and the pressure? What is it we can do to give those persons hope and to give them life? There's just such partnerships that can be made, and the men are so important to these partnerships. When I think about the conversations that I have about opioid addiction, and the conversations that I have about incarceration, and when I think about and look at the numbers of young men in West Virginia who end up in addiction and or in situations where they're incarcerated, I think our men can make a difference here. And again, we lead others best by modeling Jesus Christ in thought, words, and deeds. So where can we come up against these young men and young women? But where can we come up against some of these young men who really need our help? Right now, Putnam County needs court-appointed special advocates. They're looking for men who are willing to train to be court-appointed special advocates. And that's the way to come alongside a young person and help them to know that there's hope and there is a better way of life. It's a way, again, to share Jesus Christ in our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. In Cabell County, there's drug court. And there are people who are trying to come out and set a better life for themselves, who need mentors and coaches and someone to hold them accountable to a whole new way of life. And it's successful. Why? Because of the development of relationship. It's the development of relationships and people who want to help others. It's that modeling Jesus Christ in thought, word, and deed. And as we do this actually out in the world, we become better spiritual, more effective spiritual leaders in our own homes, with our own families. It's amazing how all that rubs off on our most intimate, closest relationships. So as we do these things, it's the Spirit of Christ that transforms us into even deeper, more mature disciples. And that makes a difference in our relationships with our kids and our grandchildren, and just all of our our extended family relationships. When we live daily in a surrendered faith, God is honored and many lives are blessed. That is the truth of the matter. And so in partnerships, relationships, these are really important these days. Our younger people are watching, especially since they've seen their parents actually stressed out. In many ways, they had not seen them stressed out before. So they're looking to see what a pattern of life is and what a healthy pattern of life is. And they're really looking to see if they matter, if they're important in this world that is so crazy and seems to be turned upside down. They're looking for that. And Methodist men have an important place in that. And so come alongside your pastors. Your pastors need connection and partnership too. They can see these needs out in the world, sometimes better than we do. And if we can build honest partnerships with our pastors and have honest, open conversations about where the greatest need is in our communities, not just within our membership communities, but within our larger expanded communities, that is so helpful. And remember that in these partnerships, you don't have to do it yourself. Part of sometimes what we need to do is equip other leaders who have gifts to be able to step out in faith and be a part of these ministries. And so when I talk about building relationships with some of our younger men, that's really essential, because some of our younger men don't realize and haven't discovered the gifts that God has given them. And you can point them out and help them discover their own gifts and their own passions for serving Christ. And in doing that, not only will they be transformed, but you will be transformed. So I commend these partnerships to you. I think I've probably gone over my time, Jerry, for you. But as as I wrap up, let me just share a couple of things. You know, here's a couple questions for maybe you to consider. I know you do devotion within your United Methodist men's group when you meet. Where else might United Methodist men, where else in your community or in what you do as a church, where else might United Methodist men step up and volunteer to be the devotional leaders in some of your other meetings and ministries? Where is it that you might be the leaders to invite prayer into whatever it is? I think one of the biggest mistakes that the local church makes is when they meet for an administrative meeting, they give like the 2-second lip service prayer instead of taking some time to really center ourselves in prayer to try to hear Christ's voice. So what is it that you might do to help promote a pattern of deeper centering in prayer? How might you literally set the seat of Christ in every gathering that happens at the church, from finance to evangelism? You know, it's really hard to ignore the fact that Christ is with you if you physically set a seat for Christ in the midst of whatever gathering is happening. How might the men kind of move in a different area? What's a local mission project that you might be able to take on in this time and invite others to be a part of, not just carry it on for yourselves, but to say the United Methodist Men are sponsoring this and we want every other aspect of the church to be involved in this, because it's not just about the men, it's about the men leading the church into deeper mission in our community. And if you don't celebrate United Methodist Men's Day, celebrate United Methodist Men's Day. And don't just celebrate the men, celebrate what they're doing. Celebrate the connections and what they're doing and how they're active in all facets of the mission and ministry of the church. So so I'll end on a spiritual formation kind of word for this. So, you know, Luke chapter 2, verse 52 said, Jesus became wise and he grew strong, and God was pleased with him, and so were the people. I think that's a passage of scripture to ponder. That's the verse that follows the only story that we have of Jesus as a youth. That's the verse. He went to Jerusalem from Nazareth, and at which time he may have realized for the first time who he truly was. And after this brief interlude, the Bible tells us that Jesus went home, was obedient, and grew up. An excellent model of ministry is to have a healthy balance of mental growth, physical growth, spiritual growth, and social growth. All those things. And adolescence is about trying on new things until the child can identify who they are in Christ. Adolescence is about trying on new things. What new things? Can United Methodist Men help our adolescents kind of try on and remember that Jesus didn't try on things in a vacuum? There was this city of Nazareth working together to help him develop. And the best way for us to help others grow is really to have a growth plan for ourselves. So what's our individual growth plan? And what's the growth plan for your United Methodist men's group? I think that's a really good question to wrestle with. So I mentioned,
Bishop,
yeah.
Bishop, if I could interject something.
Absolutely.
You came upon a point earlier where you were talking about how men of our age, primarily, where I was going to say we're sort of heading into the senior citizen years here, where we could really be mentors to the young children of the churches. And Krista had put out a something in the chat there talking about a ministry they're doing up there at Cross Lanes,
Yep.
where there is a need for older adults to provide mentorship to these younger children. And I've been involved with children's ministries throughout my career. Currently, in my retirement, I'm involved down at First Church South Charleston with what we call the WOW program, which is a once-a-week meeting for kids. And we get anywhere from like 30 to 40 kids a week coming in just for an evening of fellowship. They get a meal, and there's opportunities for sharing and for teaching and such. And guys, we have this gift. We have this gift of maturity and understanding through the years where, you know, we've been there and we can help these kids. And they're at a young enough age where we're able to reach them at a young time like this. And then hopefully it'll have an impact upon them throughout the rest of their lives. So I just commend that to you. And if you haven't checked the chats, Krista has something there about what they're doing up there at Cross Lanes. And I would commend that and any ministry to children, to everybody.
Absolutely, Dave. And in case you haven't been able to access the chat, Krista said that, you know, they're looking for help to revise the preschool there at Cross Lanes. And this is an additional opportunity to connect with young families and kids who look up to you. If you're interested in the conversations, just email Krista. And I would say, you know, it's not just Cross Lanes, but many other of our United Methodist churches are having to restart and relook and revision preschool programs and after school programs. And these are conversations that United Methodist men should be involved with. Krista, you want to say more?
Yeah, I just want to say I'm looking at you, Ken Nagley. I know that you've worked in the elementary schools before, so your wisdom would be much appreciated. Not that I'm asking you to run it, I'm saying your wisdom in these conversations as we're revisioning would be much appreciated. I know that a lot of you have worked in those places, and I have to say, I do think there is some value to having male and female mentors come alongside kids. And in this particular context, their pastor is female, the children's director is female, the children's music director is female, and all 4 of the preschool employees are female. And when my husband comes and helps, they think Jesus must be right behind him. I mean, they you know, it's like they just drop everything. They're amazed to see him, like he's the Loch Ness monster or something. I mean, they don't see it. They don't see men all day long when they're at church. And so I think that it's a particularly powerful opportunity for the United Methodist men because you are part of an underrepresented group in children's education at Cross Lanes.
Yeah. I would say that Cross Lanes isn't the only place where that is true. And so I come back to that verse, since we are supposed to be modeling in thought, word, and deed Jesus Christ. From Luke 2:52, Jesus became wise and grew strong, and God was pleased with him, and so were the people. This did not happen miraculously all by itself. There was a community in which Jesus grew, and grew mentally, physically, spiritually, and grew in love with God, came to understand who he was in relationship with God. So if you think about those things, what are the things that you need to start or stop or continue in your wisdom, in your growth in mentally, physically, spiritually, and in helping other people? What do you need to start, stop, or continue? I think that those are wonderful kinds of directions. So let me stop there, and happy to take any questions. And Jerry, if I didn't hit what you wanted me to kind of talk about, then tell me that I need to say something else.
Oh, you did good. You did good. You did good.
Questions or comments from anybody?
I thought it was very inspiring. You gave us lots of things to think about.
Yes, you
Well,
did.
good.
Yes, you did. Appreciate it. Appreciate it very much.
Got me to thinking. I'm part of the group that's planning the quote unquote relaunch, and Krista over here has just said we're meeting on Sunday. Folks, if you got any ideas, we need to hear them.
The relaunch team is meeting on Sunday.
Yes.
The church is not gathering indoors on Sunday, right? Okay.
That is one of the things that we will be starting to talk about, and I think realistically, we're getting to a point. I was reading something online today that apparently between those who've already had the virus and those who've had at least one shot, we're somewhere between better than 30% of the population. So we really need to be thinking at this time, how are we going to do it? And I don't think the answer is, well, we're going to do it the same way we've always done it. That's not going to work.
Yep, I think you're right, and I also think one of the things that Methodist men can be thinking about is that there's some in our congregations and communities that we're connected with online or virtually that may, because of work and because of other obligations, may not be able to come back during the actual worship service time, but we still need to be able to connect with those persons. Those persons are still a part of the church, and we have to be able to communicate that those persons are important. And there's also some people that, because of their health and because of this whole COVID thing that's going to continue for a while, won't feel comfortable coming back to in-service for anything for a while. And so how do we, what leadership can United Methodist men give to those people to help them know that it's okay and they're still a part of the church and we value them and want them? You know, one of the saddest pictures I think I have in my mind sometimes is people sitting at home or sitting in our nursing homes, just looking out the door and wondering, looking for somebody to recognize that they're there and wondering if someone somewhere really does care about them. And that's one of the saddest kind of pictures. And I think that we in ministry can meet that need and break into that that loneliness.
Well, Bishop, appreciate you. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
All right. We might invite you back.
That'd be great.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for the bishop? Comments?
I'm happy to take any.
Okay, if not at this time, we're gonna go move into our business meeting. And Bishop, you're welcome to stick around if you'd like. So you are too,
Okay.
Krista.
All right.